Hey climbers, and welcome back to the Treehouse. My name's Ree and this is the tarot tree, and in today's video I thought we'll have a look at some decks that we can use for inner child work. But before we get on to that, I just wanted to have a little chat. So I got a comment recently that sort of mentioned a few sound issues that I've been having, which I was becoming aware of myself. First, I just want to say thank you to that person for handling it the way they did and for bringing it to my attention, because I appreciate feedback. I'm one of those people that, if I've got toilet roll stuck at the bottom of my shoe as I come out the bathroom, please tell me. I'm not gonna be offended or anything like that, especially if it's handled with tact. So yeah, I'm trying a new kind of sound setup, mic setup at the moment. So if sound's a bit off and everything like that, bear with me. I was using a lanyard mic. For those who don't know, I have this sort of chronic condition, and part of that affects my digestive system. So, there was weird sounds, all sorts of weird and wonderful sounds I wasn't really aware of till I started listening to my videos back, gurgling, kind of swallowing sounds and stuff like that. I don't know whether to go into it too much. Hey, maybe I will, because you never know. If someone's further along in the same sort of condition, maybe they could help me, or you never know who's going to click on these videos. So I have something that's called dysphagia and gastroparesis, part of the condition I have. So it means the muscles in my esophagus and my stomach and the nerves, they can be very lackadaisical, semi-paralyzed, and that can cause a lot of kind of discomfort, pain, difficulty eating, swallowing, choking episodes, unfortunately at its worst. And so it can be a little bit tricky, especially if I've been drinking or eating before filming, these weird sounds come out. But I just wanted to put it out there, in case anyone's come further down their healing journey of that. I'm all ears. Definitely help me out with that one. But also just for you to know what those weird sounds are if in the future. I don't know how this mic setup's going to go. I've decided to take the mic off of my body to see if it will help. But like I said, I appreciate the feedback. I'll be honest, it was a little bit triggering initially, but again, that's why I want to thank that person. It showed me, you gave me the opportunity to see how far I've actually come. This is a good segue into what today's video is about, this inner child work. My inner child is very much a perfectionist. That's where perfectionism was born. So sometimes perfectionism, we hear, feedback, we might see it as criticism or a critique, and oh no, I've done something wrong, this, that, and the next. And I had my moment of that, I can't lie. Even now, where I'm probably over explaining things, but I like to be candid, I like to be open, and I feel like it was really good. So it shows that some of the inner child work I have been doing might have been paying off. And like I said, that's a good segue into today's video, which is decks to help us with inner child work. So firstly, I should probably say what inner child work is to me. It's all going to be slightly different based. We all have different inner children, right? All of our experiences as children were different. The way we carry that inner child is going to be different. So our practices have to evolve and kind of be flexible to kind of fit that in. So by no means is this going to be definitive. I just want to show some types of decks. You don't even have to go for these decks in specific. I'm going to try and make it more like category based and show you some decks that fit that mold for me. So inner child work is anything that's really connecting us with that inner child. That's the way I look at it. Yes, it can be partly shadow work, so it can be trying to connect with that inner child in order to heal parts of ourselves or shadows that have formed in childhood, as many of them do. Things that, like I said, back to being what triggers us, a lot of that can be formed in inner childhood. So getting back to that, healing those aspects of ourselves is one part. We can use our decks with that. Another part is just connecting with that element of ourselves to kind of, encourage play, authenticity, inspire ourselves again, get back in touch with them childlike aspects of ourselves that we might be losing in the day-to-day, grind, as it were. So decks that are going to help us with that, There's different aspects of looking at inner child work. It doesn't all have to be, you know, doom and gloom. Some of it is just about to inspire play. So there's sort of the aspects I'm just going to kind of be speaking on in today's video. So if that interests you, like, definitely come along. We got the trio here. I love that that's a pun. We got the Kodamas, we've got Baby Groot, and we have the Koroks from Zelda, my Zelda stands. So yeah, they're helping us on our little inner child journey today. So with a little hop, skip and a jump, let's get into it. So first up, in terms of a type of deck, I feel like a good type of deck to help us when we're stepping into this realm of inner child work, inner child healing, anything of that nature, is potentially finding an oracle deck that really speaks to that work in and of itself. So it's made specifically for inner child work. So the one I have for that, although I'm going to show another one that's not specific, but I'll tell you how it kind of fits in, is this one. It's this Inner Child and Beyond. So it's a beautiful deck. It's an indie deck. It's sort of goes in almost like a linear kind of fashion in terms of how it's numbered. I think it's out of order now, yeah. So almost like this sort of healing journey you're kind of on, connecting you to all these aspects of, you know, your inner child, maybe things that have happened in childhood that we need to work on. Got such beautiful images here, you know. We get keywords, we get this whole kind of guidebook to sort of help us out with journaling prompts. You know, if you really want to do that inner work, these questions it's going to ask you, you can use as journaling prompts, etc. It's just really to get you really kind of zoned in on that inner child. You know, it's got this beautiful kind of storybook kind of images. Look, persona definitely works in the more shadow aspects of doing inner child work here, looking when personas are formed, you know, usually in childhood. We have all these wonderful, beautiful little childlike characters, you know, embracing the sort of naturescapes and these adventures in these cards. Trust, just so wonderfully illustrated. Ah, gosh, this is one of my favorite. You know, this artwork is a sculpture about how we want to connect, our inner children want to connect, and how sometimes when we get into these adult kind of caskets of these adult forms, we kind of lose our ability to do that, and having to get back to that belonging. That's such a beautiful word. So yes, if you're getting into inner child work, it can be quite daunting, you know, depending, you know, a lot of us, you know, carry certain traumas, differing degrees from childhood. It's nice to have a deck that sort of can help us navigate that's been written specifically for this kind of work, you know, because it could be a bit overwhelming, like where do we start, etc. So it's definitely nice to have those guidelines, have that kind of holding hand and helping hand in the form of a deck. And I do think this is quite a nurturing deck. I do like the guidebook. I think a lot was put into this. You know, they definitely didn't just chuck some things together. These people, who has written it? I'm sure they have some background in doing this sort of work. I really do. By Nina Mongendry, and Edie Art is the artist. So it's worth that, you know, if you really want to embark on that sort of work by yourself. If you're comfortable with doing that, because, you know, I would recommend sometimes it would be quite good to be partly doing this work with a therapist, especially if there's trauma involved. I just want to mention that. Don't feel like, you know, don't feel ashamed or, you know, like you're failing because you're struggling to kind of tap into this kind of work. You know, it can be difficult, and sometimes we need that support and helping hand. But if you're willing to kind of do it on your own and able, and a kind of nurturing deck will help you with that, definitely go for one that's aimed at inner child work in specific. You know, look around. There are a few that are out there, not many, but it's worth looking into. See which one sort of speaks to you. You can see some walkthroughs on them, see what the guidebook's like, seeing if it's like a voice, you know, if there's a nurturing voice to the deck and to the guidebook that kind of speaks to you. It's definitely a good kind of first step into that inner child work, 100%. and I found it very, very, very valuable. I have myself. Another one I want to mention in this, which isn't specifically for inner child work, but it is Into the Lonely Woods. Now, first and foremost, for anyone that grew up at a certain time, or gosh, any kid, right? Because this book is timeless. It reminds me of Where the Wild Things Are, which was a book that was quite poignant to me as a child. It scared me a little bit as a child, I have to say. It was a bit of an eerie book to a degree, but very captivating one nonetheless. This book, this is aimed more at loneliness and isolation and that sort of aspect of healing, this oracle, I have to say. But we have these creatures and these childlike figures in this. To me, it really does speak to that inner child work quite well. We're in this forest, we've got this sort of fairy tale vibe going on. We have this getting to know yourself better, and I think when we're really trying to connect with our inner child, that's what we're doing. We're really trying to get back to that authentic part of ourselves. This is why a lot of us go into these hermit modes, to kind of reconnect with that authenticity, which to me is reconnecting with that inner child, really, and creating dialogue between us and them, or not us and them, it is us, And this deck also has a very very beautiful, very nurturing guidebook. Wow, Lucy Cavendish really did a big job, like a really good job with this deck. It's brought me to tears on a number of occasions, really, just for how beautiful and poignant this sort of guidebook kind of passages are, and what it makes you think about. Even this beautiful imagery by Dan May, because sometimes, getting back in touch with that small child, they have felt lonely, they have felt disconnected from us, we've felt disconnected from ourselves, and this is just that little gentle nudge to say, it's okay to take these times to sort of reconnect and kind of go through this sort of journey of kind of healing. It's all right, and you've got these wonderful sort of like cuddly companions, there to sort of help you along too. I really do appreciate its energy for that, and it's a lot more readily available than the one I showed, because it is a mass market, so definitely it's worth considering for this kind of work. Good for any sort of inner work, to be honest. This deck, shadow work as well, but the inner child, for some reason, it when I was thinking of decks, this one really did speak to me for that. So there's some oracles that speak to that inner child work kind of more specifically, I would say. Okay, right, the next category, let's think. Oh, he's fallen over. Man down. Okay. Okay, now we're going to move into tarot, and this is going to be tarot decks. For me, the reason I specifically got these, and I know definitely guys comment below some of yours, because I know there's a few others that you guys really love that kind of probably fit in this category, and that is decks that almost the way in which they illustrate the minors and majors really speak to it more in a childlike way, if that makes sense. Let me see if I can make that seem more succinct. So my first pick is The Little Odd Tarot by Michelle Castro. Firstly, can we just give her a shout out? Someone so young, having such a successful Kickstarter campaign, like it's a wonderful thing to see, and it was partly because of this community, so hats off to Michelle and everyone involved. It's a wonderful, beautiful deck. I have to really make that use of it. It's still in order. So these are decks that their depiction of these kind of cards, in my mind's eye, are more from a childlike way of understanding them. If we get to some of the conflict cards, is where this is going to really shine through. One, they're kooky and they're cute. Also, you have the kind of playful aspect of this, where you could start colouring it in yourself, and I like that. So that's gonna kind of fit into another category, which is decks that help with play. But this one definitely speaks to, sometimes the traumas in childhood are not like, really sort of tumultuous. They could be like the smallest kind of things, like how did we learn how to deal with conflict as a child? that is really what I'm looking to find here. I want to show you a specific card that was sort of is what made me want this deck really in the first place. See if we can get to it. Oh, we got a 5 of Cups. So it's as simple as like a rainy day, like, oh, you know, like things like that, like sort of take you back to these sort of dramas or traumas of childhood that might seem like so kind of trivial now, but it's good to sort of get us in touch with, okay, well, this is how we learn how to navigate things, especially our emotional kind of playing field at that age. It's important to make note of it, you know, and see how it may have affected us, and to kind of get us back in touch with that inner child that way, because of the sort of scenes that are more, what's the word, in tandem with that, not some like crazy sort of dramatic adult scenes that we see a lot in other decks. It's also got a bit of humour in this, which I like. 5 of Swords here, as simple as like playing a game, but like, you've taken something that's not yours, like, oh, you know, where does this sort of distrust begin in life? 7 of Swords, again, a bit the same kind of energy. The 10 of Swords, all in the head, the mind. I think that's really sweet. Not sweet, but I think it's interesting, you know, how we have these more childlike kind of depictions of the cards. It's going to be right at the end, isn't it? It's going to be the Wands that I'm looking for. Here it is, the 5 of Wands. This is the card that kind of really was like, oh wow, like, yes, 5 of Wands, competition, conflict, everyone's speaking over each other. You know, if you're a child that can never get a word in edgeways, or you was part of a big family, or, you know, you were trying to navigate school or things like that, you know, feeling overlooked or being in competition, or really trying to sort of like advocate for yourself. Like, I thought it was such an interesting depiction of the 5 of Wands. And the 5 of Wands is a card that I do kind of see more attributed to youngsters, even in, you know, traditional RWS, you know. It could be more like you're practicing, and it's more competition than just outright 5 of Swords conflict, right? I just found this very interesting. So this deck really does speak to those sort of childlike experiences with these cards, you know, these scenarios playing out in childhood, if that makes sense, you know, what they speak to. And some of that can be a bit traumatic. Some of that can really explain where some of our kind of hang-ups may come from, though it might seem trivial and mundane now. You know, you'd be surprised. Like, for example, me, my perfectionism definitely started in school. I went to a very strict Catholic school, and one of my first days in school, I had all of my work kind of scribbled out in red pen and was shouted at, and not really told why. And I was like, from that moment on, oh, I'm not going to make a mistake. You know, if you're a sensitive child, you know, being stood up and humiliated at a very young age in school as well. You know, these things, they have a kind of, they can have a bearing on your life going forward, and unless we take the time to sit down and sort of work through them. So that is why I know child work is so important. That's why I do it. Otherwise, we'll be unconsciously just feeding into these patterns constantly. And, you know, it might sound silly to some, like, oh wow, what that really started off in childhood. Like, yes, usually these things do. So yeah, that's why I liked it. I think it really spoke to those sort of scenarios in childhood that we might actually be looking at when it comes to inner child work. The other one I've picked is the Everybody's Tarot. Again, it's got that childlike feel to it. It reminds me of Mr. Men, for anyone that grew up with that. It was quite a big thing here in the UK. But look at these wizarding hierophants, these sort of monsters. Again, we get these sort of examples of more like childlike. Look, the Chariot is a skateboard, but he's like, if anyone's ever tried skateboarding, you're really trying to get yourself, you know, on that kind of flow, that trajectory, and everything can be a bit tricky, you know, and it's a bit hard to stop yourself if you're a novice. I like that. It kind of is quite playful. It reminds you of you starting off in all these kind of learning phases of life. And it's just cute, right? I know there's other decks, and there's the Playful Heart Tarot people seem to love quite a lot. That sort of seems quite childlike in how it kind of depicts things in some ways, but doesn't shy away from the sort of angst as well. There's the stubbornness, the Four of Cups, like, I'm not eating my peas, even though you know it's good for you, refusing to eat the greens, things like that. So yeah, I think decks like this that can depict the tarot scenes in a more childlike way can be very helpful, because they become a bit relatable to our inner child when we're working with it. That's what I think. That's basically the crux of that. So yeah, let me know what your ones are that speak to your inner child in that sense. If there are decks, there's something to be said for these sort of more quote unquote cute kind of decks, you know, especially when it comes to this sort of inner child realm. You know, they must be successful because they're speaking to a part of us, you know, otherwise we wouldn't be buying them, would we? So that's that. Okay, so next up, I'm gonna kind of call this one a bridge deck, or the rainbow bridge deck is what I really want to call it, to kind of really instill that childlike magic. And this is a deck that I feel can be helpful in inner child work, because it's connecting two parts of yourself, you know, maybe the part here and now, the adult self and the child self. And for me, that's usually a deck that speaks to something that you had a fondness with or fondness for in childhood that you still have now. So for some of you, it could be your fae or your fairy decks. Maybe fairies were really big for you when you was a child, and they still are. So that's something that's still really like a kind of direct line to your inner child, right? And it's nice to work with decks that kind of can keep us grounded, connected to that part of ourselves when we're doing certain work, whether it is shadow work in this realm or just play, you know. So yeah, fae decks, you know, fairy tale decks, anything like that was really spoke to you. For me, I picked this deck. It's quite funny. It's a Disney deck, right? I know a lot of you actually quite like the villains one and a few of the other ones for this sort of work. For me, this is basically a handmade one, like I bought off someone. It was really sweet. The story was they're sort of like making it with their child and stuff, so I thought that was really cute, really sweet, watching the films and stuff. And you know, Disney, I loved it as a child, and Pixar, and I'm still a fan of Pixar and Disney, you know, and I just really liked a lot of the pics in this. Oh, the star, Raya, and oh my god, why is it in the dragon? Either way, guys, it's such a good deck. It's such a good film. It's some sort of allegory for our pandemic times, honestly, but definitely. So this is something, you know, it's nostalgic, it's sentimental for sure, and it does bridge that gap, because you know, you can watch back these films as you become an adult and you sort of appreciate them in a different way. But like I said, I still love a good Pixar film. I'm not a crazy Disney fanatic, not that there's anything wrong with that, but I saw this and I thought, what, this would be such a cool deck. You know, it's like Quasimodo for the Hermit. Oh, like some of the pics are just so good, and you know, Disney does lend itself, you know, it's them fairy tales again to this. You know, I'm in the process of trying to make a Studio Ghibli deck, because no one's made one. I really wish they'd make it like a mass market good one, but you know, needs must. I shall create my own. But yeah, Disney, it's this bridge. You know, I still enjoy it now. It's taking me back to those days. You know, if I'm trying to do work on things from back then. But I have my deeper understanding of these stories now. You know, here Marlon, you know, you can relate to him more as you get older. 9 of Swords, and he's like, oh my god, my child has gone missing, you know. You can start seeing things from different characters' perspectives that maybe you didn't as a child, and it sort of bridges that gap. That's why I like it. But like I said, anything that connected you to your childhood, really, that you still have in your life today, can be a good kind of deck for that sort of kind of inner child work, I think. I think it should be a bit of fun as well, definitely. And it might make it a bit easier, you know, if you're doing like more shadow work. It might have that sort of comforting aspect too, to make it not so heavy. So that's why a bridge deck, you know, a rainbow bridge deck between yourself now and then can be a good good deck to have when doing this work. Okay, next up, we have to introduce the play deck. You know, it's not all shadow work and hard work and deep diving work and no play when we come to inner child sort of connecting. You know, and here I have the Tripping Weight Tarot, the Stars edition. That's fabulous. I love this company as well. By tarotcollectibles.com. Check them out. They have a few different iterations. I think a lot of the Rider-Waite is hippie-ish. Speaks to me. It's colourful, it's playful, it's just so vibrant, and it's just like a lot of fun, like, and I like that. You know, there's a part of me that's always been a bit hippie-ish since I was a child, that's loved colours, loved sparkly things. So, you know, why not bring that into the tarot practice? Why not have fun with it? You know, go check out Marine's tag, you know, for good mood decks. That's all a part of play, all a part of inner child work for me. You know, really connecting back to that sort of, that point of joy in ourselves. You know, that sense of freedom of play that we lose so often. You know, it doesn't always have to be heavy, you know, deep diving shadow work, as I said. You know, can definitely just be about connecting with that self for inspiration, you know, for a switch of energy, you know, for some fun. Why not? And decks that sort of speak to that, you know, whatever reminds you of that, are kind of worth having in the collection, you know, in general, not just for like connecting with this, but just, you know, to kind of bring that into our lives back, bring that into our lives in general. Gosh, she's fabulous. Bit more Tisha vibes from her, I love it. So yeah, it had to be fun. It reminds me of, what were they called? Was it like Groovy Babes or Groovy Girls? Oh, 90s kids, Unite. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like, you get like all the stationery with her drawn on and things like that, and like, I think like kind of bags and accessories, them sort of Jacqueline Wilson books and stuff, that kind of vibe. Groovy Chicks, was it? Oh, so it reminds me of. And yeah, I love that. I love that. It takes me to a very specific kind of warm time in my life. And, oh, I can't, it's not even doing it justice. I don't know if you can see the sparkle. I had to get the sparkly one. It's fantastic. So yeah, decks that inspire play. That's all part of inner child connecting, you know, inner child work. So don't forget those out, you know. We need that balance. We need that balance, you know, not just all deep and dark diving. And kind of, I guess, a little bit in that realm. Well, not fully, but I'd say next time going on to a deck that I feel, especially if you're embarking on work that can be a bit triggering, maybe be a bit heavy, might be a bit hard at points, especially if you're taking it on like by yourself. Like, honestly, like I've said before, if you feel you can't go there with this, and it would be better to do it with a kind of professional or a spiritual practitioner, or whatever kind of realm that you want to kind of look into and get that support, please do. I don't want to underestimate how tricky, you know, inner child work, shadow work in general can be. It's, you know, nothing to feel kind of, you know, ashamed about if you need help with that, for sure. But if you are ready and you're feeling able, always good to have a comforting deck around. Okay, so for me, if you know the channel, my comforting deck forever and always will be my Lord of the Rings tarot. Now, you might be like, well, really, this isn't all like cuddly. No, it's not. It's comforting to me. One, because Lord of the Rings has been a comfort and sort of solid thing through my childhood, and like I've said before many times, it's something I go to when I'm going through hard times. I watch the movies like back to back, you know, it gives me some hope, some inspiration, that sort of pick me up I need, and this deck is no different. You know, it's quite a sharp shooter for me, but it's also quite comforting, and because it reads so well and it sort of gives me that message, you know, it's going to be alright, everything's going to be alright. So when things get a bit heavy, you know, crack out a deck that makes you feel more comforted. You know, it's good that we have these direct messages sometimes, but you need decks that can give you that bit of a hug as well. So check out hug decks. I'm sure that's a tag that went around a little while ago as well. People might put things like the gentle tarot in this, you know, and definitely can see some people saying that. You know, anything that has them sort of cozy, comforting vibes, you know, to lift you up if you've been doing some heavy work. Definitely have that in there for the balance, I think. And if it speaks to your childhood, like, even better. Who knows, you know, can really give that inner child a hug as well as your current self. So yeah, a comfort deck that has to kind of go in for me is my Lord of the Rings, and wouldn't be without it. It's always something I can fall back on, really through any sort of read, to be honest. So yeah, don't be afraid to fall on those comforts if needs be. That's what they're there for. Life's all about balance. I guess I'm gonna chuck in like a little bit of like a miscellaneous sort of category, because this may be very specific to me, but maybe speaking on it might kind of resonate with a few of you also. So the next deck I wanted to show is my John Bower Tarot. Why this is used in child work for me, why I think it works, is a couple of reasons. Firstly, I want to make note of the fact that I've modified mine. So mine is no longer a tarot, okay? It's a very open oracle. And for me, quite specifically, I'd say it's a storytelling oracle. And I've made a tag and a video on that a few videos back about storytelling in decks and how that's important. For me particularly, it's important in terms of childhood. You know, this is where we first start telling ourselves the stories of the world, of ourselves. You know, obviously then you've got the flip side of storytelling being this beautiful thing, fairy tales, using it as a way to reflect on our lives and ourselves, as well as kind of taking us back to that nostalgic aspect of childhood potentially. And this sort of speaks to that all, you know. It also gives you that more playful, childlike kind of freedom and scope when it comes to the practice, because because it's not a tarot, it's not even an oracle. I would say it's more like a storytelling. It's just sit with these cards and see how your intuition kind of speaks to you. This is what I do. I lay them out as a story, okay, when I'm asking specific questions, you know. Maybe I'll look at a kind of inner child prompt from my inner child deck and see, okay, let me lay out some of my John Bower kind of oracle cards. Let's see what these stories can be telling me here. What can I glean from this? Gets you in touch with your intuition, which is very much part of our childlike self, I believe. Definitely seems to be more there in childhood in my experience. Gets you more confident in your ability to read and be yourself and be free in that again, when we have a lot of that stifled as we grow into adulthood. That's what I believe anyway. So a practice that can actually sort of help us like build our sort of a deck that can help us build our sort of intuition, you know, build our confidence in kind of getting back in touch with that. To me, is a lot to do with getting back in touch with that inner child, and that's why I love this. I love the fact that it's a fairy tale deck as well, because obviously fairy tales play a big role in a lot of our childhoods, you know, whether it is us just growing up with Disney or Studio Ghibli, you know, these are all fairy tales, whether we was read them or read them ourselves as kids. There's all this archetypal energy, and you can really just draw on, oh, how is this making me feel? Like, how is this image making me feel? Which is getting you back in touch with them. So that emotional body, that emotional self, that, you know, as in adulthood we try to shut off a lot through logic and the mind. So a deck that challenges you a little bit, I guess, is what I'm saying. A deck that really helps you kind of move more free in your intuition, getting you more confident with it again, building up your sort of self in that way, I think can be a really healing part of inner child work. So it can be really helpful. So definitely, if you have that, if you have this deck and it didn't resonate with you the way it was made into a tarot, definitely consider modding it. I think it was the best thing I ever did with this deck, genuinely. Or even if you have, there are those storytelling kind of cards you can get, right? Or them sort of Dixit cards, I think, are the other ones. they could be a really kind of interesting exercise in building up your sort of connection to that part of, that younger part of yourself, and that intuition, which is a big part of that, I feel. So yeah, think on that. That could be helpful. And secondly, miscellaneously, I have to throw this in because I do use it, and I kind of did buy it for this purpose really, which is the Tarot of the Little Prince. Again, we're going back to a storytelling deck. Also, this is like kind of the ultimate fool's journey for me in a deck because of this book. It's not a book I read in childhood, although it is deemed a children's book. I don't know about that. I think it definitely has bigger scope than that for sure. It's very poignant. I read it in adulthood, but this character, you know, the Little Prince, he sort of embodies, you know, a lot of our journey from growing up, you know, and that is, you know, we've all had to do that. You're all doing it to differing degrees. You know, we could be adults and not be very mature. We could still be, a lot of us, you know, trapped, kind of traumatized children in adults' bodies trying to navigate this world. And it's good to kind of be encouraged by a deck that sort of is taking you on that journey with the character as well, because you can kind of be him and, you know, see yourself as him, if that makes sense. Hopefully I'm not waffling. I'm trying to be coherent. Does it make sense? I like a deck that speaks to like a, you know, that age-old becoming of age kind of story, that trope, you know. It's very important, and this is what integration is in the long term. We integrate shadows and we get back to our inner child when we give them that nurturing, we give them that time, we give them that compassion, you know. We try and heal these aspects of ourselves, reconnect with these aspects of ourselves. It is a journey, you know, there's lots of ups and downs in this story. As you'll see through this deck, you know, it is basically the story in a deck. And, you know, it's a bit encouraging to use a deck that kind of lets us know that, you know, we can get through it in the end. We can evolve and still keep that inner child with us, you know, in a lot more healed and at peace state, hopefully, as we go forward. So yeah, I just wanted to chuck that in because I do make use of this deck for this kind of work, and I think it works really well, and I think this is a really underrated tarot deck, to be honest. Obviously it'd be good to be familiar with the story when you're using this, but it is pretty RWS based. But honestly, even if you are an adult, I would read this book. It's a very, very poignant story, I think. So we're on to our final category now, which is something, when I was thinking about rounding this up, I was like, oh, hold on a minute. There is an aspect, you know, a category that I think is actually very important when it comes to this work, sort of goes hand in hand with it, and that is having a deck that, you know, this is sort of in the realm of comforting deck also, but slightly more specific, and that is a mothering deck, a deck that speaks to that compassionate energy, that mothering energy. And the reason I think this is very important is because a lot of inner child work, particularly if we're doing deep work, is going to involve to some degree us learning how to remother ourselves. This doesn't necessarily mean that we came from a family where we didn't have a good mother or things like that, you know. Obviously parenthood can be, you know, it is the hardest job in the world, you know, and all of us have different experiences of that, you know. But to some degree, we're all going to have to be learning to remother ourselves. Honestly, that's sort of how this sort of work goes. I believe you're going to have the most balanced, nurturing mother going, and still we're going to have to learn how to do that for ourselves in some aspects, I believe. And so when we're doing this work, I think it's important to have those decks that speak to that mothering energy, because the mother wound may come up in this kind of work for sure. Maybe I'll do a video on that specifically going forward. Let me know if that's something you're interested in. Obviously, this is all work I'm doing myself. That's why I'm speaking on it at the moment. So, you know, if it helps someone, I'll be really glad. But yes, decks that speak to that mothering energy. And I pulled a few just for some ideas. Definitely let me know what yours are. So first up, I have the Believe in Your Own Magic, which to me is a little bit more of like a big sis deck, but it's definitely got this very encouraging and nurturing feminine energy, I want to say, that to me just speaks to that sort of mothering energy. You know, it's like, have you ever had that big, like, you know, the mum of the group, you know, the best friend that's like got that big mum energy like that, you know, the nurturer, the looker after, you know, the one's going to give you the pat on the back and say it's all going to be all right. This is what this deck is to me. You know, it's like that friend, that mothering friend in a deck. And it's just beautiful. There's, you know, even though there's some kind of darker cards in this, time for healing, not war, you can even see from the imagery, the book always has some quite uplifting messages, very nurturing, kind of hug-like messages. And we need that. It's good to close off a read. These are specifically good for closing off a read, I want to say. Like, if it's been a heavy one, if it has been more in the shadow aspect of inner child work, potentially, having that sort of mothering deck to close it off can really help you get in that energy of mothering yourself. Also just make you feel a bit more supported. So yeah, it's upside down and that's going to jar me. So yeah, that is the Believe in Your Own Magic Oracle deck. Deity might also be something you work with that could be helpful for this. For me, the person that really speaks to that energy, compassionate, mothering energy, will always be Kuan Yin. This is a deck I use often as a kind of balancing deck for shadow work, to draw at the end. And, you know, this is a very beautiful deck. It's by Lana Fairchild. The messages, you know, they're quite poetic, a bit long, you know, but we get her energy in it, and I think that's what's most important. Knowing that there's compassion here in the world that we can tap into, you know, if we don't have someone physically to be that for us, you know, maybe we can call in this sort of, you know, deity energy if we work with it. Maybe just being reminded of that sort of feminine kind of energy through the words in the book could be enough to kind of help us, you know, start creating that sort of supportive kind of energy around ourselves. So yeah, this is could be another very good one. Let me know if there's any other deities you work with that sort of that might fit that mold. You know, if you Gaia, if you work with that, Mother Earth energy can be good. Just something to let you know that you're being held by something, you know, and to help you, inspire you to, you know, get into that remothering energy for yourself also. And last but not least, this is quite specific to me. Some of you might be like, oh, I don't really see that energy in it, but this is I love this bag, by the way. Tell me you're an earth sign without telling me you're an earth sign tarot bag edition. All of them are green. And that is the Intuitive Night Goddess. I feel I might do a separate video on this because this is very specific to me in terms of what I use it for. This is a deck, so we're going to go a bit more into that spirituality realm for those of you that are interested. That connects me directly to a female spirit guide of mine, the only one I've really made contact with. I've sort of spoken about it a little bit before, but I might make a whole video on it. It also connects me to my maternal lineage, so I've realised that the people that I've passed on, particularly my mother's side, speak to me through this deck also. So that can be very, you know, a deck that speaks to that ancestral energy for you might be quite good, particularly maternal ancestral energy. You know, that's that divine feminine energy could be another kind of deck to pull in for this. You know, she definitely sees me as this sort of young soul that, you know, is quite funny. I'll have to tell the story about how she appeared to me in a dream. But yeah, it's straight talking this deck to me, but like it's quite comforting, you know. So that definitely has that sort of mothering vibe in terms of the way the messages are delivered, the way it tries to treat me like kindly but kind of directly. Lets me know things are going to be okay, like don't worry, you know. So that's why it's good to kind of pull these decks that definitely have that strong connection to something that you find very supportive. That's why I say if you work with deity, if you work with ancestors, you know, again, it don't even necessarily have to be that kind of mothering energy per se, but you know, it could help. It could definitely help to help you feel supported, which I think can be good when you're doing any sort of deep inner work. You know, but particularly with inner child work, that's why I bring that sort of compassion and that sort of archetypal mother energy in for sure. Another deck that I didn't mention, but it's kind of quite specific. So you have the Caroline Mrs. Archetypes deck, which has quite an interesting specific part about the inner child, like what inner child archetype do you embody. I think it's based off the work of Jung, who made some very interesting kind of reflections on that. I have to say it was worth reading some of his work for sure. But yeah, definitely that was quite interesting as well, to see what inner child kind of, you know, I inhabit, or what we inhabit. Like if you have that Archetypes deck, that might be worth cracking out as well. I don't have it to hand, but it just came to mind, so I thought, why not speak on it? So yeah guys, I think that's it. I hope I wasn't speaking too fast and crazily and you made sense of all of that. I haven't filmed for a little while. Consistency is not my strongest suit, it has to be said. Had a lot of flare-ups in the old health recently, so if I've been a bit quiet, that's why. But you know, it's nice to be back and sort of share some things that I've been doing and see if it can resonate with anyone here, and definitely like open up a kind of dialogue. I'm always happy to hear from you guys and see, you know, what decks help you with this work, how you go about it, you know, it'd be very interesting. So yeah, any practices that help you. So I just want to take this moment to just say, you know, we can all just have a little breathe in, breathe out, you know, try and connect a little bit with our inner child, show that sort of gratitude, you know, that we're still here, they still got us here to this point, here and now, and we're here to look after them. For me, this might not be a practice for everyone, but when I get particularly triggered or stressed, I am quite a visual person, and I also find touch quite comforting. But you know, modify this into any kind of exercise that makes your inner child feel the most safe. But what I do is I envision myself, my older self, hugging my younger self, and for whatever reason it really does start to kind of dampen things down, you know, calm down a trigger, you know, make me feel more safe, make them feel more safe. So if you ever want to take that on board, that's something you think you could get something from, please take it, because it has been a help to me. Or if there's something else that you do, I'd love to hear from you guys. Honestly, this work is so personal to each and every one of us, but you never know, like, some of the things you found helpful could be so helpful to others. So sharing can be, you know, such a great thing to do also. So yeah guys, thanks for being here. I hope you're doing well wherever you are, and those little versions of yourself are too, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.